Have you ever wondered why nobody bothered to teach you the most important subject of all in school? You learned about the War of 1812, you memorized the periodic table, and you probably still remember that mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. But when it comes to managing your actual money, making smart financial decisions, and building wealth that could change your entire life trajectory, suddenly the education system went completely silent. Well, here's the uncomfortable truth. Only half of American adults can demonstrate basic financial literacy, according to recent surveys. That means if you're sitting in a room with 10 people, 5 of them have no clue what they're doing with their money. And honestly, that's probably being generous. Like the average American correctly answers just 48% of basic financial questions, which means most people are literally failing at managing the one thing that affects every single decision they make. My name is Nick, and I've spent years studying why some people build incredible wealth while others struggle paycheck to paycheck their entire lives despite earning similar incomes. What I've discovered is that the difference isn't luck. It's not about having rich parents, and it's definitely not about making 6 figures. The difference is financial literacy. And today, I'm going to teach you everything they should have covered in school but never did. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly where you stand financially right now, how to create a realistic plan that actually works for your situation, and most importantly, how to start building wealth even if you're currently living paycheck to paycheck. We're going to cover budgeting that doesn't feel like torture, emergency funds that actually protect you, debt strategies that make sense, investing basics that won't put you to sleep, and even whether you should buy or rent your next home. But here's what makes this different from every other financial advice video you've seen. We're not going to pretend that everyone watching this makes $100,000 a year or has wealthy parents who can bail them out. We're going to deal with real life, real budgets, and real challenges that actual people face every single day. So if you're tired of feeling confused about money, frustrated by conflicting advice, or stressed about your financial future, make sure you stick around because we're about to change that. And if this information helps you take control of your finances, hit that like button and subscribe because your future self will thank you for it. Let's start with something that might make you uncomfortable but is absolutely essential. Understanding your financial now. Most people have no idea where they actually stand financially, and that's like trying to navigate to a destination without knowing your starting point. You might think you know your situation, but unless you've done this exercise recently, you're probably wrong. Your financial now consists of 3 key numbers that paint the complete picture of your financial health. First is your net worth, which is simply everything you own minus everything you owe. Second is your monthly cash flow, which is your income minus your expenses. And third is your financial runway, which is how long you could survive if your income disappeared tomorrow. Let's start with net worth because this number tells you more about your financial progress than anything else. Add up the value of everything you own: your checking account, savings account, retirement accounts, your car, your home if you own one, even that collection of vintage comic books if they're actually worth something. Now, subtract everything you owe: credit card debt, student loans, car payments, mortgage, that money you borrowed from your brother 3 years ago, and keep forgetting to pay back. The resulting number is your net worth, and here's what might surprise you. According to the Federal Reserve, the median net worth for households under 35 is less than $39,000. If you're between 35 and 44, the median jumps to $130,000. For those 45 to 54, it's $240,000. So if your net worth seems low, you're not alone, but now you know exactly where you stand compared to everyone else. But net worth only tells part of the story. Your monthly cash flow reveals whether you're moving forward or backward each month. Track every dollar that comes in and every dollar that goes out for at least 1 full month. I know this sounds tedious, but this single exercise will teach you more about your spending habits than years of vague financial anxiety. Your income side is usually straightforward. your salary, any side hustle money, investment returns, whatever your total monthly income actually is. The expenses side is where most people get shocked. Housing, transportation, food, utilities, insurance, debt payments, subscriptions, entertainment, random Amazon purchases you forgot about. Add it all up and subtract your expenses from your income. If the number is positive, you have surplus cash flow, which is fantastic. If it's negative, you're spending more than you earn, which explains why your credit card balances keep growing. And if it's exactly zero, you're living paycheck to paycheck with no buffer for emergencies or building wealth. Here's where it gets interesting. Let's say your monthly surplus is $300. That might not sound like much, but $300 invested every month at an 8% return becomes over $460,000 in 30 years. That's the power of understanding your actual cash flow instead of just hoping everything works out. Your financial runway is the third piece of this puzzle, and it's probably the most important for your peace of mind. Take your monthly expenses and divide them into your total liquid savings. Liquid savings means money you can access quickly without penalties. So your checking account, regular savings account, and maybe money market accounts count, but your retirement accounts and that certificate of deposit that doesn't mature for 2 years don't count. If your monthly expenses are $3,000 and you have $9,000 in liquid savings, your financial runway is 3 months. Most financial experts recommend having 3 to 6 months of expenses saved, but honestly, even 1 month puts you ahead of a huge percentage of Americans. According to the Federal Reserve, 37% of adults couldn't cover a $400 emergency without borrowing money or selling something. Understanding these 3 numbers gives you complete clarity about your starting point. Maybe your net worth is negative because of student loans, but your cash flow is positive and growing every month. Maybe your net worth looks decent because you own a home, but your cash flow is tight and your runway is practically non-existent. Each scenario requires a different strategy, and you can't create an effective plan without knowing exactly where you're starting from. Now that you know where you stand, let's talk about setting goals that actually matter. Most people approach financial goals completely wrong. They pick arbitrary numbers like, I want to save $10,000 or I want to be debt-free without connecting those goals to what they actually want their life to look like. Effective financial goals start with your life goals, not random dollar amounts. What do you actually want? Maybe you want the security of knowing you won't be financially destroyed by an unexpected expense. Maybe you want the freedom to take a lower paying job you'd actually enjoy without worrying about paying rent. Maybe you want to buy a home, start a family, or retire before you're too old to enjoy it. Once you know what you want your life to look like, you can reverse engineer the financial requirements. Want job flexibility? You need a larger emergency fund and lower fixed expenses. Want to buy a home? You need a down payment, good credit, and stable income. Want to retire early? You need a serious wealth building strategy that goes far beyond just contributing to your company's retirement plan. Here's the key difference between people who achieve their financial goals and those who don't. Successful people create specific, measurable goals with realistic timelines, while unsuccessful people create vague wishes with no deadlines. Instead of, I want to save more money, try, I want to save $15,000 for a home down payment within 18 months. Instead of, I want to get out of debt, try, I want to pay off my $23,000 in credit card debt within 2 years. But here's where most people mess up. They set goals that sound impressive but are completely unrealistic given their current situation. If your monthly surplus is $200, don't set a goal to save $30,000 in 1 year. The math doesn't work. You'll get frustrated and you'll give up. Better to set a goal you can actually achieve and build momentum than to set an impossible goal and quit after 3 months. Your goals should also have different time horizons. Short-term goals are things you want to accomplish within the next year, like building a small emergency fund or paying off a credit card. Medium-term goals might take 2 to 5 years, like saving for a house down payment or paying off student loans. Long-term goals are things like retirement, your children's college education, or achieving complete financial independence. The beauty of having goals with different timelines is that you can make progress on multiple fronts simultaneously. Maybe you're putting $50 per month toward your emergency fund, $200 toward paying off debt, and $100 toward your house down payment fund. Each goal feeds into the others, and as you accomplish short-term goals, you can redirect that money toward medium and long-term objectives. Setting goals that matter also means being honest about your priorities. You might want to travel the world, buy a luxury car, own a home, and retire early. But unless you're earning massive amounts of money, you'll probably need to choose. Like the people who try to do everything simultaneously often end up accomplishing nothing because their resources are spread too thin. This brings us to your 12-month money plan, also known as budgeting, but let's be honest about something. Most budgets fail because they're too restrictive, too complicated, or completely disconnected from how people actually live their lives. The word budget makes people think of deprivation and endless spreadsheets, but a good budget is actually the opposite. It's permission to spend money on things you value while making sure you don't accidentally sabotage your future. Think of your budget as a spending plan rather than a restriction plan. You're not trying to minimize every expense. You're trying to maximize the value you get from every dollar while ensuring you're making progress toward your goals. The best budget is one you can actually stick to for months and years, not one that looks perfect on paper, but falls apart after 2 weeks. There are several budgeting approaches that work well for different personalities and situations. The 50-30-20 rule suggests spending 50% of your after-tax income on needs, 30% on wants, and 20% on savings and debt repayment. This works well for people who want simplicity and don't like tracking every expense category. Zero-based budgeting means assigning every dollar a job before you spend it. Your income minus your expenses should equal zero. Not because you're spending everything, but because every dollar is allocated to either current expenses or future goals. This approach works well for people who like control and want to maximize their money's efficiency. The envelope method involves putting cash into different envelopes for various spending categories. When the envelope is empty, you're done spending in that category for the month. This method works exceptionally well for people who struggle with overspending, because it makes spending tangible and creates natural limits. Regardless of which approach you choose, your budget needs to account for irregular expenses that happen throughout the year. Things like car insurance, holiday gifts, annual subscriptions, home maintenance, and medical expenses. Most people forget about these costs, then wonder why they can never stick to their budget. Set aside money each month for these irregular expenses so they don't derail your entire financial plan. Your budget also needs to include some flexibility for entertainment and personal spending. A budget that doesn't allow for any fun is a budget that won't last. Build in money for dining out, entertainment, hobbies, or whatever brings you joy. The key is being intentional about this spending rather than letting it happen accidentally. But here's what separates a good budget from a great one. A great budget evolves with your life and gets easier to maintain over time, not harder. Start simple, track your results, and adjust as needed. If you budgeted $300 for groceries but consistently spend $400, either find ways to reduce your grocery spending or adjust your budget to reflect reality. Fighting against your natural spending patterns is exhausting and ultimately unsustainable. The goal isn't to create a perfect budget. The goal is to create a sustainable system that helps you spend intentionally while making consistent progress toward your financial objectives. And speaking of progress, let's talk about smart saving strategies that actually protect you when life inevitably throws you a curveball. Smart saving isn't just about stuffing money under your mattress or letting it sit in your checking account, earning basically nothing while inflation slowly eats away at its value. Smart saving means understanding the difference between different types of savings goals and matching your money to the right accounts and strategies. Let's start with the emergency fund, which is probably the most important financial concept that nobody wants to think about until they desperately need it. An emergency fund is exactly what it sounds like. Money set aside specifically for genuine emergencies, not for that amazing sale at your favorite store or a spontaneous weekend trip that you'll definitely regret on Monday morning. The traditional advice says you need 3 to 6 months of expenses saved in your emergency fund, but let's be realistic about what that actually means for most people. If your monthly expenses are $4,000, we're talking about $12,000 to $24,000 sitting in an account doing nothing except providing peace of mind. For someone living paycheck to paycheck, that might as well be $1,000,000. Here's the thing though, having no emergency fund is like driving without insurance. Sure, you might be fine for years, but when something goes wrong, it goes really wrong. Your car breaks down, you need emergency dental work, your employer suddenly decides they don't need you anymore, or your landlord sells the building and you need to find a new place to live with first month's rent, last month's rent, and a security deposit. Without an emergency fund, these situations force you into debt. You put the car repair on a credit card, you take out a personal loan for the dental work, or you borrow money from family members and promise to pay them back someday. Suddenly, your temporary emergency becomes a long-term financial burden with interest rates that make the original problem seem cheap by comparison. So how do you build an emergency fund when you can barely make ends meet? Start small and be strategic about it. Even $25 per week adds up to $1,300 in a year. That might not cover 6 months of expenses, but it'll handle most minor emergencies without forcing you into debt. The key is treating your emergency fund contribution like a bill that must be paid, not like leftover money you'll save if there's anything remaining at the end of the month. Because let's be honest, there's never anything remaining at the end of the month unless you make it happen intentionally. Automate your emergency fund contributions so you don't have to rely on willpower or remember to transfer money manually. Set up an automatic transfer from your checking account to your savings account every payday. Start with whatever amount won't cause you to overdraft your checking account, even if that's only $10 per week initially. As your emergency fund grows, you'll notice something interesting happens psychologically. Having even a small financial cushion reduces stress and makes you feel more confident about your financial decisions. You're not constantly worried about what happens if something goes wrong because, you have at least some protection. But where should you actually keep this emergency fund? This is where a lot of people make mistakes that cost them money. Your emergency fund should be easily accessible when you need it, but not so accessible that you'll spend it on non-emergencies. This means it shouldn't be in your checking account where it's mixed with your regular spending money, and it shouldn't be invested in the stock market where its value could drop right when you need the cash. High-yield savings accounts are usually the best option for emergency funds. These accounts typically earn significantly more interest than regular savings accounts while still providing easy access to your money when you need it. Online banks often offer the highest rates because they have lower overhead costs than traditional brick-and-mortar banks. Money market accounts are another good option, offering slightly higher interest rates than regular savings accounts while maintaining liquidity. Some money market accounts come with check writing privileges, which can be convenient for larger emergencies where you need to pay contractors or service providers directly. Certificates of deposit might seem tempting because they often offer higher interest rates, but they lock up your money for specific time periods with penalties for early withdrawal. That defeats the entire purpose of an emergency fund, which is having money available when you need it, not when the bank decides you can have it back. Here's something most people don't consider when building their emergency fund. The size of your emergency fund should reflect your specific situation, not some generic rule you read online. If you have a stable job with good benefits and a working spouse, you might be fine with 3 months of expenses. If you're self-employed with irregular income, have health issues, or work in an industry known for layoffs, you probably need closer to 6 months or even more. Your emergency fund should also grow as your expenses increase. If you get married, buy a house, have children, or take on other financial responsibilities, your emergency fund needs to increase accordingly. The fund that protected you when you were single and Renting a studio apartment won't be adequate when you're supporting a family and paying a mortgage. Once you've built a solid emergency fund, you can start thinking about other savings goals that require different strategies, like short-term savings goals like a vacation next year or a new laptop in 6 months can stay in high-yield savings accounts because you'll need the money relatively soon. Medium-term goals like a house down payment in 3 to 5 years might benefit from conservative investment options that offer higher potential returns than savings accounts while still protecting your principal. Long-term savings goals, especially retirement, need to be invested for growth rather than sitting in savings accounts where inflation will steadily erode their purchasing power over decades. But we'll talk more about investing strategies later because there's something else we need to address first. The elephant in the room that's probably costing you more money than you realize. Let's talk about debt, because if you're carrying high interest debt while trying to save money, you're essentially trying to fill a bucket with a giant hole in the bottom. The mathematics of debt are brutal and unforgiving, but understanding how debt actually works is crucial for making smart financial decisions. Not all debt is created equal, and that's the first thing you need to understand. There's good debt, and really bad debt. Good debt helps you build wealth or increase your earning potential over time. Your mortgage is usually considered good debt because real estate typically appreciates in value and the interest is often tax deductible. Student loans lead to higher earnings that can be good debt if they more than offset the cost of the education. Bad debt is money borrowed to buy things that lose value over time or don't generate income. Car loans fall into this category because cars depreciate rapidly and you're paying interest on something that's worth less every month. Credit card debt used for consumer purchases is bad debt because you're paying interest on things like clothes, restaurants, and gadgets that provide no financial return. Really bad debt is high interest debt used for consumption or speculation. Payday loans, cash advances, and credit cards with interest rates above 20% are financial poison that can destroy your wealth building potential for years. If you have this type of debt, eliminating it should be your absolute top financial priority, even before building an emergency fund. Here's why the math is so devastating. If you have $5,000 in credit card debt at 20% interest and you only make minimum payments, you'll pay over $15,000 in total and take more than 30 years to pay it off. Meanwhile, if you had invested that same money at an 8% return, it would have grown to over $50,000 in 30 years. The opportunity cost of high interest debt isn't just the interest you pay, it's also the wealth you could have built with that money. So what's the best strategy for paying off debt? There are two main approaches, each with different psychological benefits. The debt snowball method focuses on paying off your smallest balances first, regardless of interest rates. You make minimum payments on all debts and put any extra money toward the smallest balance. Once that's paid off, you take the money you were paying on that debt and add it to the payment on your next smallest balance. The debt avalanche method focuses on paying off your highest interest rate debts first, regardless of balance size. Mathematically, this saves you more money in interest charges over time, but it can be psychologically challenging if your highest interest debt also has a large balance. Both methods work, but the debt snowball often works better for people who need psychological wins to stay motivated. Paying off a small balance quickly provides a sense of accomplishment that can fuel your motivation to tackle larger debts. The debt avalanche makes more mathematical sense, but requires more discipline because progress can feel slower initially. Regardless of which method you choose, the key is consistency and avoiding new debts while you're paying off existing debt. This means living below your means and using cash or debit cards instead of credit cards for new purchases. It also means addressing the underlying behaviors that created the debt in the first place. Many people focus solely on the mechanics of debt repayment while ignoring the psychological and behavioral aspects that led to the debt accumulation. If you don't understand why you overspent in the first place, you'll likely repeat the same patterns even after paying off your current debt. Common reasons people accumulate debt include lifestyle inflation, emotional spending, lack of emergency funds, and simply not tracking expenses carefully enough to notice gradual increases in spending. Addressing these root causes is just as important as paying off the balances themselves. Student loans deserve special consideration because they often represent the largest debt burden for young adults, and the repayment options can be confusing. Federal student loans typically offer more flexible repayment options than private loans, including income-driven repayment plans that adjust your payments based on your earnings. If you have federal student loans and you're struggling with payments, don't ignore them or assume forbearance is your only option. These programs can reduce your monthly payments, and some programs offer loan forgiveness after a certain number of qualifying payments. However, loan forgiveness programs have strict requirements and often require you to work in specific fields or for qualifying employers. Private student loans are less flexible, but might be eligible for refinancing at lower interest rates if your credit has improved since you originally borrowed the money. Refinancing can save you thousands of dollars in interest over the life of the loan. But be careful about refinancing federal loans with private lenders because you'll lose access to federal protections and repayment options. The key with student loans is understanding all your options and choosing the repayment strategy that aligns with your overall financial goals. If you're pursuing loan forgiveness, make sure you're following all the requirements exactly, because small mistakes can disqualify you after years of payments. Car loans represent another major debt category that deserves careful consideration. The average car payment in America is now over $700 per month, and the average loan term has stretched to nearly 6 years. This means people are paying more money for longer periods on assets that lose value rapidly. The total cost of car ownership extends far beyond the monthly payment. Insurance, maintenance, repairs, fuel, registration, and depreciation all add up to make car ownership expensive. The average person spends over $900 per month on transportation costs, which represents a significant portion of most budgets. If you currently have a car loan with a high interest rate, refinancing might save you money, especially if your credit score has improved since you originally financed the vehicle. However, be aware that cars depreciate so quickly that you might owe more than the car is worth, which limits your refinancing options. The best strategy for car loans is to avoid them entirely when possible by buying reliable used cars with cash. If you must finance a vehicle, keep the loan term as short as possible and avoid being upside down on the loan. Never roll negative equity from one car loan into another car loan, as this creates a debt spiral that can take years to escape. Now that we've covered the defensive aspects of money management, budgeting, saving, and debt elimination, let's talk about the offensive strategy that actually builds wealth over time. This is where most people get stuck because investing feels complicated, risky, and intimidating. But here's the reality. Not investing is actually the riskiest financial decision you can make because inflation will slowly destroy the purchasing power of money sitting in savings accounts. Understanding how investments actually work is like learning a new language, except this language can literally change your entire financial future. The problem is that most people think investing is either gambling or something only rich people do, when in reality, investing is simply putting your money to work so you don't have to work forever. Let's start with the basics, because I guarantee your high school didn't cover this. When you invest money, you're essentially buying a piece of something that you expect will be worth more in the future. You might buy shares of companies through stocks, lend money to companies or governments through bonds, or own pieces of real estate through various investment vehicles. The goal is to earn returns that outpace inflation while building wealth over time. The magic happens through something called compound interest, which Albert Einstein allegedly called the eighth wonder of the world. Whether he actually said that or not is debatable, but the concept is absolutely real. Compound interest means you earn returns not just on your original investment, but also on all the returns you've already earned. It starts slowly, but over time it becomes incredibly powerful. Here's a simple example that'll blow your mind. If you invest $100 per month starting at age 25 and earn an average return of 8% annually, by age 65, you'll have over $700,000. But if you wait until age 35 to start investing that same $100 monthly, you'll only have about $300,000 by age 65. That 10-year delay cost you $400,000, even though you only invested $1,200 less in total. This is why time is your most valuable asset when it comes to investing, not the amount of money you start with. A 22-year-old investing $50 per month will likely end up wealthier than someone who starts investing $500 per month at age 40. The early bird doesn't just get the worm, they get the entire worm farm. Now, where should you actually put your investment money? For most people, especially those just starting out, the answer is surprisingly simple. Low-cost index funds that track the total stock market are probably your best bet. These funds own tiny pieces of hundreds or thousands of companies, which spreads out your risk while capturing the overall growth of the economy. The S&P 500, which tracks the 500 largest companies in America, has averaged about 10% annual returns over the past several decades. That includes surviving the Great Depression, World War II, multiple recessions, the dot-com crash, the 2008 financial crisis, and the 2020 pandemic. The stock market goes up and down in the short term, sometimes dramatically, but over long periods it has consistently rewarded patient investors. Here's what most people get wrong about investing. They think they need to pick individual stocks, time the market, or find some secret strategy that beats everyone else. In reality, trying to outsmart the market usually leads to worse results than simply buying a broad index fund and holding it for decades. Even professional fund managers struggle to beat index funds consistently after accounting for their fees. Your investment strategy should be boring, not exciting. Exciting investment strategies are usually code for risky speculation that might make you rich quickly, but will more likely make you poor quickly. Boring strategies like consistently investing in diversified index funds while reinvesting all dividends have created more millionaires than any get-rich-quick scheme ever invented. But let's address the elephant in the room. What about market crashes? Yes, your investments will lose value sometimes, possibly a lot of value. During the 2008 financial crisis, the stock market dropped over 50% from its peak. During the early days of the 2020 pandemic, it dropped over 30% in just a few weeks. These declines are scary, but they're also temporary if you maintain a long-term perspective. Here's the counterintuitive truth about market crashes. They're actually good for young investors who are regularly adding money to their accounts. When prices drop, your regular contributions buy more shares at lower prices. When the market recovers, and it always has historically, those extra shares become incredibly valuable. It's like getting a discount on your future wealth. The key is having the right timeline and expectations. If you need your investment money within the next 5 years, the stock market isn't the right place for it. Stock market investing is for money you won't need for at least 10 years, preferably much longer. Your emergency fund and short-term savings should stay in safer accounts, while your long-term wealth-building money can handle the ups and downs of market investing. Diversification within your investments is also crucial, but it's simpler than most people think. Instead of trying to pick the perfect mix of different investments, just buy a target date fund that's designed for someone planning to retire around your expected retirement year. These funds automatically adjust their mix of stocks and bonds as you get older, becoming more conservative as you approach retirement. Now let's talk about investment accounts, because where you invest is almost as important as what you invest in. If your employer offers a retirement plan with matching contributions, that should be your first priority. Employer matching is literally free money, and passing it up is like declining a raise. Even if you can only contribute enough to get the full employer match, that's an immediate 100% return on your money before any investment growth. After maximizing your employer match, consider opening an individual retirement account, either traditional or Roth. Traditional IRAs give you a tax deduction now, but you'll pay taxes when you withdraw the money in retirement. Roth IRAs don't give you a current tax deduction, but all withdrawals in retirement are tax-free. For most young people, Roth accounts make more sense because you're likely in a lower tax bracket now than you'll be in retirement. The annual contribution limits for retirement accounts might seem low, but remember that you'll hopefully be investing for 30 or 40 years. Even small contributions can grow into substantial sums over time. The key is starting as early as possible and being consistent with your contributions, even if you can only afford small amounts initially. Taxable investment accounts don't have contribution limits or withdrawal restrictions, making them perfect for goals that fall between short-term savings and retirement. Maybe you want to buy a house in 10 years, start a business in 15 years, or achieve financial independence before traditional retirement age. Taxable accounts give you the flexibility to access your money when opportunities arise. Here's something most financial advisors won't tell you because it doesn't generate fees for them. You don't need to overcomplicate your investment strategy. 3 or 4 low-cost index funds can provide all the diversification you need. A total stock market index fund, an international stock index fund, and a bond index fund will cover pretty much every investment you could want. Add a real estate investment trust fund if you want some real estate exposure without the hassle of being a landlord. The most important factor in investment success isn't picking the perfect funds or timing the market perfectly. It's consistently investing money every month regardless of what the market is doing. This strategy, called dollar cost averaging, automatically buys more shares when prices are low and fewer shares when prices are high. Over time, this smooths out the volatility and usually results in better returns than trying to time your investments. But let's be realistic about something. Investing in the stock market requires emotional discipline that many people simply don't have. When your account balance drops by 20 or 30%, which will happen multiple times during your investing career, you'll be tempted to sell everything and put it back in savings accounts. This is exactly the wrong thing to do, but it's what most people do, because losing money feels terrible even when it's temporary. Successful investors understand that volatility is the price you pay for higher long-term returns. They view market downturns as sales on future wealth rather than reasons to panic. They continue investing during scary times because they know that's when they're getting the best deals on shares. This mindset takes practice to develop, but it's essential for long-term investment success. Real estate often comes up in discussions about building wealth, and it can be a good investment, but it's not as simple as many people think. Your primary residence isn't really an investment in the traditional sense because it doesn't generate income, and you still need somewhere to live even if you sell it. Real estate can be a good inflation hedge and can build wealth over time, but it also requires significant capital, ongoing maintenance, and isn't as liquid as stock market investments. Investment real estate, where you buy properties to rent to others, can generate excellent returns if you do it correctly. But being a landlord is essentially running a small business with all the challenges that entails. You'll deal with tenant problems, maintenance issues, vacancy periods, and significant upfront costs. Many people romanticize real estate investing without understanding the time commitment and headaches involved. Real estate investment trusts, or REITs, offer a way to invest in real estate without the hassles of direct ownership. REITs are companies that own and operate income-producing real estate, and they're required to distribute most of their profits to shareholders as dividends. You can buy REIT funds just like stock index funds, giving you real estate exposure in your portfolio without becoming a landlord. The decision between buying and renting your home is one of the biggest financial choices you'll make, and it's not as straightforward as most people think. The traditional advice says renting is throwing money away while buying builds equity, but this oversimplifies a complex decision that depends on many factors specific to your situation. Home ownership can be a great wealth building tool if you buy the right house at the right time in the right location and stay there long enough to offset the transaction costs. But home ownership also comes with significant costs beyond the mortgage payment. Property taxes, insurance, maintenance, repairs, and opportunity costs can add up to much more than many first-time buyers expect. Here's a realistic scenario. You buy a $300,000 house with a 20% down payment, so you need $60,000 up front plus closing costs. Your mortgage payment might be around $1,500 per month, but you'll also pay property taxes, homeowners insurance, and private mortgage insurance if you put down less than 20%. budget at least 1% of the home's value annually for maintenance and repairs. So that's $3,000 per year for our example house. Compare that to renting a similar property for $1,800 per month with no maintenance responsibilities, property taxes, or major repair costs. If you invested the $60,000 down payment plus the difference in monthly costs in index funds earning 8% annually, you might end up wealthier renting depending on how much the house appreciates and how long you stay there. The break-even point for buying versus renting is usually somewhere between 5 and 7 years, depending on your local market conditions and the specific numbers involved. If you're planning to move within 5 years, renting probably makes more financial sense. If you're planning to stay put for a decade or more, buying often comes out ahead financially while providing the stability and control that many people value. The most important decision you'll make about your car isn't the brand, the color, or whether it has heated seats. It's how much you're willing to let transportation costs destroy your wealth building potential. The average American now pays over $700 per month for their car payment alone. And when you add insurance, gas, maintenance, and repairs, transportation becomes the second largest expense category for most households. Here's some uncomfortable math that'll make you rethink that shiny new car in the dealership window. A $700 monthly car payment invested at 8% returns instead becomes over $900,000 over 40 years. That luxury SUV isn't just costing you $700 per month. It's potentially costing you nearly $1 million in retirement wealth. Suddenly, that reliable, used Toyota starts looking pretty attractive. The key to smart car buying is understanding the total cost of ownership, not just focusing on the monthly payment. Dealerships love customers who ask, "What's my monthly payment?" because they can manipulate loan terms to hit any payment target while maximizing their profit. A better question is, what's the total amount I'll pay over the life of this loan, and what else could I do with that money? If you absolutely must finance a vehicle, keep the loan term as short as possible and avoid being upside down on the loan. Never roll negative equity from one car loan into another car loan, as this creates a debt spiral that can take years to escape. And please, for the love of compound interest, don't lease a car unless you're using it for business purposes and understand the tax implications. The best car buying strategy is buying reliable used vehicles with cash when possible. Let someone else take the massive depreciation hit during the first few years while you drive a perfectly functional vehicle that gets you from point A to point B without destroying your financial future. Your future millionaire self will thank you for choosing practicality over prestige. Now, let's talk about something that feels impossibly far away, but is actually the most important financial goal you'll ever have. Retirement planning isn't just about having money when you're old. It's about having choices throughout your entire life. When you have substantial retirement savings, you gain the freedom to take career risks, pursue opportunities that might not pay well initially, or even retire early if that's your goal. The mathematics of retirement are both encouraging and terrifying. Encouraging because compound interest makes even modest savings grow into substantial wealth over decades. Terrifying because most Americans are woefully unprepared for retirement and don't realize it until it's too late to fix the problem easily. According to recent surveys, the median retirement savings balance for all Americans is just $87,000. Using the traditional 4% withdrawal rule, that provides $3,400 per year in retirement income, or about $290 per month. That's not a retirement plan. That's a recipe for working until you die or living in poverty during your golden years. Social Security will provide some income, but the average benefit is only about $1,800 per month, and there are serious questions about the long-term viability of the program. Even if Social Security continues unchanged, which is unlikely, it was never designed to be anyone's sole source of retirement income. It's supposed to be one leg of a three-legged stool, along with employer-sponsored retirement plans and personal savings. The general rule of thumb is that you'll need about 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement income to maintain your standard of living in retirement. If you're currently earning $60,000 per year, you'll need $42,000 to $48,000 annually in retirement income. With Social Security providing maybe $20,000 per year, you need to generate $22,000 to $28,000 annually from your retirement savings. Using the 4% rule, that means you need between $550,000 and $700,000 saved for retirement. That might sound impossible, but remember the power of compound interest and time. If you start investing $300 per month at age 25 and earn 8% annually, you'll have over $800,000 by age 65. Start at 35 and you'll have about $370,000. Start at 45 and you'll have only about $150,000. This is why retirement planning can't be something you'll get around to eventually. Every year you delay starting costs you tens of thousands of dollars in potential retirement wealth. The good news is that you don't need to figure out everything at once. Start with whatever you can afford, even if it's just $50 per month, and increase your contributions whenever possible. Your employer's retirement plan should be your first stop, especially if they offer matching contributions. If your employer matches 50% of contributions up to 6% of your salary, that's an immediate 50% return on your money before any investment growth. Not taking advantage of employer matching is like declining a raise, which makes about as much sense as using a $20 bill to light a cigarette. After maximizing your employer match, consider opening a Roth IRA if you're eligible. The contribution limits might seem small, but remember that all withdrawals in retirement will be tax-free, including decades of investment growth. For young people especially, paying taxes on contributions now in exchange for tax-free growth forever is usually a great deal. Target date funds make retirement investing simple for people who don't want to become investment experts. These funds automatically adjust their mix of stocks and bonds as you approach retirement, becoming more conservative over time. You literally just pick the fund closest to your expected retirement year and let it handle the rest. It's like autopilot for your retirement planning. The key to successful retirement planning is consistency and patience. You're not trying to get rich quick. You're trying to get rich slowly and surely. Market volatility will test your resolve multiple times during your career, but staying the course during scary times is what separates successful retirement savers from those who panic and sabotage their own progress. Here's something that might change your perspective on retirement planning. You're not just saving for when you're old and gray, you're saving for freedom and choices throughout your entire life. When you have substantial retirement savings, you have what's called screw you money. You can walk away from toxic jobs, take entrepreneurial risks, or pursue opportunities that might not pay well initially, but could lead to something amazing. So how do you actually reach these financial goals we've been talking about? How do you go from understanding these concepts to actually implementing them in your messy, complicated real life? The answer isn't complicated, but it's not always easy either. Success comes down to creating systems that work automatically even when motivation fails. The first step is automation. Automate your emergency fund contributions, debt payments, retirement contributions, and any other regular financial goals. When money moves automatically from your checking account to appropriate savings or investment accounts, you don't have to rely on willpower or remember to make transfers manually. You also can't spend money that's already been allocated to your goals. Set up your direct deposit to split your paycheck between checking and savings accounts. Have retirement contributions deducted from your paycheck before you ever see the money. Schedule automatic transfers for your emergency fund and other savings goals. The goal is to make saving and investing as effortless as possible while making spending slightly more difficult. The second step is tracking your progress regularly without obsessing over short-term fluctuations. Check your net worth quarterly, not daily. Review your budget monthly to see where you're succeeding and where you need adjustments. Monitor your investment accounts a few times per year, but don't make decisions based on short-term market movements. Progress tracking serves two important purposes. It keeps you accountable to your goals and helps you course correct when things aren't working. It also provides motivation by showing you concrete evidence that your efforts are paying off. When you can see your net worth growing and your debt balance is shrinking, it becomes easier to stick with your plan during challenging times. The third step is building flexibility into your system. Life will throw curveballs that mess up your perfectly organized financial plan. You'll have unexpected expenses, income changes, family emergencies, or opportunities that require adjusting your priorities. The key is having a system that can bend without breaking. This means building buffer room into your budget for unexpected expenses. It means having multiple savings goals so you can temporarily redirect money from less urgent priorities to more pressing needs. It means understanding that setbacks are temporary and don't require abandoning your long-term plan entirely. The fourth step is continuous education and adjustment. Your financial knowledge should grow over time and your strategies should evolve as your situation changes. What works when you're single and renting might not work when you're married with children and a mortgage. The principles remain the same, but the specific tactics need adjustment. Read books, listen to podcasts, take courses, or work with fee-only financial advisors when your situation becomes complex enough to warrant professional help. But be wary of anyone trying to sell you expensive investment products or promising returns that seem too good to be true. The best financial advice is usually boring and doesn't generate commissions for salespeople. The final step is patience and persistence. Building wealth is like growing a tree. You plant seeds, water them regularly, protect them from storms, and wait for compound growth to work its magic. There are no shortcuts that don't involve unacceptable risks, and anyone promising otherwise is probably trying to separate you from your money. Most people overestimate what they can accomplish in 1 year and underestimate what they can accomplish in 10 years. Financial success is built through small, consistent actions repeated over long periods. Missing 1 month of contributions isn't a disaster, but missing 10 years of contributions absolutely is. You now have everything you need to master your personal finances. You understand where you stand right now, how to set meaningful goals, how to create budgets that actually work, how to save smartly and pay off debt strategically, how to start investing for long-term wealth, and how to make smart decisions about major purchases like homes and cars. The information gap that kept you confused about money no longer exists. The only gap remaining is between knowing what to do and actually doing it. That gap is closed through action, not more research or planning or waiting for the perfect moment that never comes. Your financial future is determined by what you do next, not what you know or intend to do someday.